kill you.
No, he wasn't. I told you how it happened.
He was trying to kill you, I say. I know this boy, and I know his father. They're bad.
Gee whiz, Uncle Matt.
You listen to what I say. They're dangerous, Chuck, these people. Unless we do something about this now, they'll go even further than beaning you just the next time.
But, gosh, why? Tommy already got my position on the team. He don't want nothing else.
Now, you listen to me, Chuck, and remember what I have to say. When Tommy Lee beamed you today, it wasn't any accident. He did it on purpose, do you understand?
Well, gee, I didn't think so, but maybe...
He did it on purpose, I tell you. He was afraid you'd win back your position on the team, so he wanted to get you out of the way. Now, you remember that.
Okay, Uncle Matt.
Yes, now one other thing. There's Jim Olsen you mentioned. Didn't you tell me he was the manager of the Unity House team?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. He made you second-string pitcher and then stood up for Tommy Lee against you.
Yeah. He's been on Tommy's side ever since he came out for the team.
Okay. We'll take care of him, too.
Take care of him? What do you mean, Uncle Matt?
Now, don't ask questions, Chuck. Go in and eat your supper. And you and I are going someplace.
Yeah? Where?
To a place where no boy has ever been before. A meeting of real Americans who know how to take care of these Tommy Lees and others like them. Now, go ahead and eat your supper. And look, don't say anything to your mother, because this is going to be a secret meeting. Now, hurry. We've got important work to do tonight.
Strangely uneasy, Chuck Riggs looks up at the tall, powerful figure of his uncle, whose eyes blaze with an evil fire the boy has never noticed in them before. What is the secret meeting to which Matt Riggs is taking the boy? What is behind his insistence that Tommy Lee had purposely beamed Chuck? Evil, subversive forces are set to work against Jim Olsen and Tommy Lee tomorrow. So don't miss the next episode in our thrilling new story, fellows and girls. Tune in tomorrow, same time, same station.
Faster than a speeding bullet. More powerful than a locomotive. Able to leap tall buildings at a single bound.
Look, up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Superman.
Kellogg's Pep. P-E-P, Pep. Kellogg's Pep, the Sunshine Cereal, presents
The Adventures of Superman. Today, the accident on the Unity House baseball field has far-reaching consequences as Chuck Riggs, under instructions from his uncle, attends a strange and secret meeting. And now, the adventures of Superman. Bad feeling between two boys on the Unity House baseball team has resulted in a threat of serious trouble for manager Jimmy Olsen and young Tommy Lee. Jealous because Tommy had supplanted him as number one pitcher, a boy named Chuck Riggs heckled him in batting practice and, when crowding the plate, was accidentally struck in the head. That evening, Chuck told his Uncle Matt what had happened and was surprised to hear his uncle insist that Tommy had beamed him deliberately. Playing on the boy's bitterness, Matt Riggs coached him in what he was to say at a certain secret meeting that night. And as we continue now, Matt is driving his nephew high into the dark, wooded hills above Metropolis. Listen.
Look, where are we going, Uncle Matt?
I told you, to a secret meeting.
What kind of a meeting?
You'll find out when we get there. But remember, you're not to breathe a word of what you see or hear to anyone. Not to anyone, do you understand?
Yeah, sure, but what's
all right, now don't ask any more questions. This is important to me, so remember, Chuck. That boy, Tommy Lee, deliberately beamed you today. He wanted to kill you.
Gee, I don't know, Uncle Matt. It might have been an accident. You know, I was crowding the plate.
Would you get that stuff out of your head? It wasn't an accident. He did it on purpose. He was afraid you'd win back your position on the team, so he wanted to get you out of the way, don't you see?
You really think he did?
I know he did. Now, remember what I told you. Answer all my questions correctly, and we'll fix him plenty good.
Carefully drilling his nephew to make him believe the false version of the baseball accident, Matt Riggs drives to the top of a hill, then turns down a rutted, weed-grown road which winds between the trees. Suddenly, they come into an opening, and as the car stops, Chuck gasps at the strange scene before him. In a glade, casting weird shadows over the nearby hills and lighting the sky above, burns a huge wooden cross. Before it kneel 100 men clothed in long robes. Pointed hoods, slit only at the eyes, cover their heads and faces, and a low guttural chant issues harshly from their hidden lips, sending an uneasy chill through Chuck's blood. While the boy looks about him at the fearsome sight, Matt Riggs dons a robe and hood on which a pale blue scorpion is embroidered. Then, followed by Chuck, he approaches the kneeling hooded band. A strangely barbaric company in the dancing light of the flaming cross.
Gosh, who are all these guys, Uncle Matt? And why are you wearing the sheets and hoods?
We're the clan of the Fiery Cross, Chuck.
The Clan of the Fiery Cross?
Right. We're a great secret society pledged to purify America. America for 100% Americans only. One race, one religion, one color.
I don't get it. America's got all kinds of religions and colors.
When we get through, there'll only be one.
Only one? But the Constitution says all Americans have the same rights and privileges.
Constitution. We'll change that. Now be quiet. Be quiet until I call on you.
Attention, brothers. All hail the Grand Scorpion.
Brothers, in the clan of the Fiery Cross, supreme authority vested by me as Grand Scorpion, I hereby call this secret session open. Arise now, and by the light of the flaming symbol of our creed, make the sign of fealty to our sacred vows.
Rising to their feet, the robed and hooded figures solemnly place their right hands over their hearts, and crossing the first two fingers of their left hands, extend them toward the burning wooden cross. As under their breaths, they repeat the anti-democratic oath of the Klan.
Brothers, as your leader, I felt it my duty to call this special secret meeting tonight because of something of terrific importance to all of us that took place today. Something proving that our sworn enemies have risen against us. That they have already struck the first blow and are preparing to strike more blows at real Americans through our children. Here beside me stands a fatherless American boy who is today the first victim of our sworn enemies. Today an attempt was made by vermin, filthy scum, who have moved into our community on the life of this American boy. Now wait, brothers, wait and listen. I want you to hear this terrible story from this unfortunate young victim's own lips. Okay, Chick. Now you tell him the story, and tell it just the way I told you to. Make no mistakes, you understand?
Well, I used to be the pitcher on the Unity House baseball team, and I was fired from that position when a new guy joined up.
Yeah.
And
tell us about this boy, Chuck. Is he like us Americans?
No, sir.
Could he ever be like us Americans?
No, sir.
Or his family Americans?
Well, they're citizens, but...
Yeah, answer the question. Are they good 100% Americans?
No, sir.
No. Now go on with your story. What happened today?
Well, we had team practice today, and I was up at bat. This kid was pitching, and he deliberately threw a fast ball and beamed me.
Tell us how you know this attempt to kill you with a pitched ball was deliberate, Chuck.
Well, he said he'd get me because he wanted to make sure he'd keep the pitching spot,
And what else?
and because when he won the boys' league championship game, why, it'd give his kind of people a sort of weapon to use against American folks like us.
Good work, Chuck. You did swell. Well, did you hear that, brothers in the Klan? That young whelp who is not a true American, who can never be a true American, tried to kill this fatherless American boy. And why? Because he has been schooled by his kind and their foreign sympathizers to strike against our plan for a pure, clean America. An American free from mixed races, mixed colors, and mixed religions. Are we going to stand idly by and see this scum weasel their way into our neighborhoods and our jobs? Are we going to stand by and watch their striking at our children and yours and mine? No, indeed, we strike back, and the time is now. So get set for action. The Fiery Cross burns tonight.
Heart hammering with fear, Chuck Riggs begins to feel the icy fingers of doubt creeping up his spine as he watches the fanatical fury aroused in the hooded men by his Uncle Matt against what he knows to be a family innocent of offense. But he is powerless to stop the frenzied Klan's first act of blood-chilling violence, scheduled to take place that night. The following morning, Jim Olsen is alone in the Unity House locker room when Tommy Lee enters, his face wan and drawn.
Oh,
Hiya, Tommy. You're late for practice. Hurry up and get into your uniform.
No, Jim. I'm quitting the team.
What? Oh, now look, Tommy. You can't do this to us. Why, we need you. Why, your pitching is the mainstay of the team. We'd fall apart without you.
It's swell of you to say that,
Oh,
but...
I mean it. Gotta have you for today's game. It's the playoff in the semifinals.
Well, look, you know I'm not just doing this to let you and the other fellas down. It's just that... Well, I guess I might as well tell you. Last night, a burning cross was planted on our front lawn by a bunch of men wearing hoods and gowns.
What?
You know what that means to my family, don't you?
Sheepers. That sounds like the Fiery Cross Clan. But why you and your family?
If you don't know, Jim, I can't tell you.
I know how I can find out. Look, you go home and sit tight, Tommy. I'm going to see Mr. Kent and tell him about this. And right away. I'll see you later.
Worried at the thought of losing his star pitcher and puzzled by Tommy's startling story, Jim Olsen rushes off to seek the aid of Clark Kent. What is behind this un-American threat to personal freedom and safety? We'll know more in a moment, so stand by for the startling climax of today's episode. Alarmed when his star pitcher, Tommy Lee, told him he must quit the team because of a flaming cross, the terrifying warning symbol of the Fiery Cross Clan that was placed on the Lee lawn last night, Jim Olsen rushed to the Daily Planet, where we find him now discussing the outrageous incident with Clark Kent.
I didn't know the Fiery Cross Clan was even organized in Metropolis, Mr. Kent.
Neither did I, Jim. This is very bad news.
And how? Another thing that gets me is why they're picking on Tommy Lee and his family.
Who are the Lees, Jim? Would I know them?
I don't know, but I think you'd know about Tommy's father.
Huh?
He's the man who was just appointed city bacteriologist.
Oh, he is, eh?
Uh-huh. Do you know him?
No, I don't, but I know now at least one reason why they've been singled out by that hooded mob.
You do?
Mm-hmm. I also know that they're in danger, Jim. Very great danger.
Well, why? What did they do to...
Oh, it isn't what they've done, it's what they are. Do you know where they live?
Sure, but gee whiz, Mr. Kent, why...
Come on. I'll answer your questions on the way, Jim. We've got to put a stop to this sort of thing before it goes any further. But before we do anything, we're going to have a talk with Tommy Lee. Let's go.
Unaware that he, too, has been marked for the future vengeance of the hooded band by its leader, Matt Riggs, Jim Olsen hurries out after Clark Kent, still puzzled by the reason for the un-American attack on Tommy Lee's family. Why are these people the object of the vicious secret band's fanatical hatred? And what will happen to the Lees and to Jim Olsen if this grim, cowardly warning of intolerance is ignored? Tomorrow's episode is tense and exciting as Superman begins a fight against the most dangerous enemies to personal freedom and democracy in America. Tune in, same time, same station. Don't miss it.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rebecca Randall. Thanks for joining us on Good Day. My guest today is a man who for nearly 5 decades has worked to pull the hoods and the sheets off the Ku Klux Klan. Stetson Kennedy's first encounter with the Klan occurred in his own family. When he was a small boy, he discovered his uncle's Klan paraphernalia in a closet. He went on to join the Klan as an undercover investigator. He says the things he found out as a secret member of the KKK chilled his blood, but he kept his silence and continued working. Much of the information he gathered was reportedly turned over to the FBI and other law enforcement agencies, who Kennedy says was more interested in what he knew about Martin Luther King Jr. and other black freedom fighters. Mr. Kennedy, in the mid-40s or early 40s, wrote 2 books, Southern Exposure and The Klan Unmasked. After the publications, he became a hero in Europe and a villain at home. This morning, Stetson Kennedy and the Ku Klux Klan in America. So stay with us, and we'll get started with Good Day. Welcome back to Good Day. How viable is the Klan today? Well, if anyone knows, it is my guest, Stetson Kennedy. He has spent some years as an undercover Klansman, and one of the incidents in Florida he says he cannot forget is the case of Harry T. Moore, who was head of the NAACP in 1950 when his home was blown up, killing him and his wife. There was an investigation, but the killers were never found. Good morning. How are you? Well, first off, let me say I'm glad that you could be with us today. And secondly, how have you survived the Klan? They must know about you by now.
Yes, that's certainly the case. In fact, they were pretty well aware that they were infiltrated from the very beginning, because I lost no time in taking the information that I was getting to the FBI, as you say, and to such other law enforcement officers if I could find any who were not members of the KLAN. It was not all that easy. The very high proportion of both the sheriff's departments and the police departments where I was working were inside the KLAN. So this created a problem.
And you took the oath?
Yes.
You became an undercover Klansman.
The Grand Dragon at one time did me the honor of issuing a wanted bulletin, all Claverance bulletin, you might say.
On you?
On me.
And
that my posterior, if you please, was worth $1,000 per pound.
I saw that in
FOB
one of your books.
Atlanta. And I don't know whether that's still a standing offer or not. That particular Grand Dragon is no longer with us.
I'm going to hold this up. This is a photograph of you, is it not?
It is. I haven't
when
changed
you were
a bit.
when you were a member of the KLAN?
I haven't changed a bit.
No.
I can see.
This was you were a member of the Brown Shirters, as it was called?
They were calling themselves the Colombian Brown Shirts, and they were based in Atlanta, and were also called the Juvenile Delinquents of the KLAN because of my presence in the KLAN itself. The KLAN was pretty much precluded from direct action, taking violent action as long as I was there. So this thing formed as an adjunct to the KLAN, but of course I promptly joined it too.
Yes.
I think I was number 16. They issued me card number 5,016, but I was actually the 16th.
Oh, so 5,000 was just
to make things look good.
Look as they were bigger than what is. It's part of the KLAN's working modus operandi. Is part of that to deception, to be very deceitful?
I think they're probably the past masters of deceit, Reconstruction period, and that in effect is the history of the original KLAN. And I'm contending in that book, which is to be called After Appomattox, How the South Won the War, and will be published by Florida A&M next year. In that book, I am contending that the original KLAN was far from being a prank, was in effect a continuation of the Civil War, and meant simply a change of uniform from the Confederate gray to the Ku Klux white, and from open military warfare to guerrilla warfare. And of course, it was a nocturnal, night riding affair against not soldiers, but against unarmed civilians, black civilians.
Basically, just mainly black.
Slaughter.
Exactly, and over the years they expanded their focus not only on blacks but on Jews and virtually everyone else who spoke out against them, I'm assuming.
That's much into witch burning and the burning of slaves, runaway slaves during slave days. So that entire tradition of antipathy to not only Jews but Catholics and the foreign-born generally still carries over till the present time.
Until this present time. I was going to ask Harry T. Moore and why you are still interested in this case, which happened in 1950, and it's 40 years now, and it's still in the forefront of your mind.
Harry Moore lived at Mims, Florida, not far from where we are now, with his wife Harriet and daughters. And he was head of the Florida NAACP as Medgar Evers was of Mississippi.
Right.
And Harry Moore, in 1950, I announced for the United States Senate to run against George Smathers in the general election as an independent, colorblind candidate on a platform of total equality. This is 1950. And no one had ever spoken that kind of language in the political arena in this country since Reconstruction, if then. I don't think it even occurred at that time. So I announced, and Harry Moore had an organization called the Progressive Voters League of Florida, an adjunct of the NAACP, and he had registered 70,000 black voters that year, new ones. And he called a meeting, and they endorsed my candidacy unanimously. The other candidates didn't even answer the invitation to appear. And about that same time, there was a sheriff nearby who shot 2 black prisoners. The Supreme Court had ordered that they be given a retrial.
This was in Lake County, was it not?
Yes, it was.
Willis McCall,
Willis McCall, and he proceeded to pick up the prisoners from Rayford and They were driving down a back road, and the two prisoners handcuffed together were shot, 5 or 6 shots. And the story was that they had attacked him. And so Harry Moore, I covered that coroner's inquest, and there was a special investigator there by the name of Jefferson Elliott, appointed by Governor Fuller Warren to investigate the matter. And I took a chance and knocked on his motel room and gave him the KLAN recognition sign, and he promptly gave it back to me. And went on to say that
that told you a great deal right up front, didn't it?
He went on to say that he was a member of the East Point, Georgia KLAN, and I had him outranked being a member of the Clavern number 1 there in Atlanta. And as a brother Klansman, he confided to me that he had been to Rayford and had been told by the people there that those boys, as he put it, had been, no doubt about it, they'd been beaten before breakfast, after breakfast, and all hours of the day and night when they were delivered to Rayford. And the Rayford people didn't want to be blamed, so they took photographs of the injuries and gave them to the FBI. Now, the accused prisoners were constantly saying they had been beaten, but there was the evidence in the hands of the FBI, and it had never surfaced in any of the court proceedings. So I called Thurgood Marshall in Washington, and he and Roy Wilkins met me at the airport there, and we went to the Justice Department at 2 a.m. And I urged that they send in non-Florida agents to find those photographs. And just recently I applied for my file under the Freedom of Information Act, and on that subject all it said was there was a fellow in here named Kennedy, didn't mention Thurgood Marshall. Kennedy was in here saying that all of our Florida agents are racist. Oh. That's as far as it went.
We could just quickly tell me, Harry T. Moore, why is it that you think that this is not over, this case is not over?
Yes, well, after the shooting of the prisoners while they were handcuffed, Harry Moore was having meetings all up and down the Florida East Coast, mass meetings demanding that the sheriff be investigated and prosecuted if found guilty. And at the same time, I was doing the same in the national press and speaking in Miami before the NAACP on the same subject. And Moore was assassinated, in my opinion, because he was doing just that, demanding that the sheriff be prosecuted.
Who do you think was behind it? Or who do you think actually did it?
Someone confessed some years later, a decade later, who said he had been recruited into the KLAN, and it was a multi-KLAN job, and that he was hired, paid $2,000 to make the bomb. And incidentally, we're doing a film just these past several weeks with the feeling that not only was he a friend of mine and a great civil rights fighter like Medgar Evers, but I feel that he got killed and I didn't because he was black and I was white. Otherwise, we would have both been killed.
Yeah, so, and there's just so much to this story. The man who led the investigation into the Moore bombing later became sheriff of Volusia County and remained sheriff until he retired a couple of years ago.
That's correct. He issued an 88-page report saying that I think the gist of what he found was one pair of number 9 shoes leading away from the scene.
And he wrote about that for 88 pages. That's interesting.
Found some number 9.
And he was a lead investigator for the FBI?
Yes, he was. They had some 100 agents, and that's all they could find.
How many books?
4 have been published. I've done a good many more, but 4 have been published.
Right,
and all published at mid-century. That was my first book.
This Palmetto Country was the very first one.
I've called it a barefoot history of Florida.
Okay. And we have here, I'm going to get to that one last, Southern Exposure. All of these, by the way, are reissued through the University of Florida in Gainesville. You can get them all now, and it certainly gives you a very vivid a picture, I'm assuming, of what Florida was not too many years ago. We're talking in the 30s and 40s and 50s, are we not?
Yes, the first book, Palmetto Country, is a Florida book. The others are all Southern books, and not only Southern, but national.
Right.
They cover the whole apartheid system.
I'm going to do the Jim Crow Guide. This book was first published in France by the author Jean-Paul Sartre.
Correct.
Prior to being published here in America. And you were hailed as a humanitarian and all by the Europeans, but here in America you were called a villain.
The Jim Crow Guide and the Klan book did get into something like 20 languages around the world. That's true. And yet, as long as the American apartheid system prevailed, I could not find a publisher here.
Good night. So finally, what are you working on presently? Are you still out there battling with the Klan or battling with injustices, or what are you doing?
Well, as I say, all these past few weeks we've been filming and talking to people who were involved in the assassination of Harry Moore and his wife. And it's been a concern of mine all along that the case of Medgar Evers in Mississippi, which happened some, I think, 12 years after the assassination of the Moores.
Right.
His case had been reopened as a result of a television investigation, and hopefully this may have the same effect on the Florida case.
This film that you're speaking of, where is it going to be? How do you see civil rights having progressed in this country since the 30s?
You know, one thing that might be said is, as a measure of the progress made and not made, is that where we once had segregated racism, we now have desegregated racism. I think that's about the size of it.
So in other words,
not
much progress.
Put another way, you know,